Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.
The SparkFile podcast may contain profanity and other adult content.
Please use your discretion.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Welcome to the Spark File, where we believe that everyone is creative, but smart creative people know that you do not have to go it alone.
I'm Laura Camion.
And I'm Susan Blackwell. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. But you may be asking yourself, what exactly is a Spark File? Where do I get one? What do I file in it? These are such good questions, and we actually do have answers.
We really do. A Spark File is the place where you consistently collect all your inspirations and fascinations. And if you're like us and you're making stuff all the time, you know that sometimes the wellspring of inspiration can run a little dry. We're here to refill it.
We are. We're on the lookout for fresh ideas, images, and inspiration that spark our creativity and pique our curiosity, things that inspire us to get up off of our asses and make things like this podcast.
Or a drawing composed of thousands of colorful circles.
Or a crocheted sweater that you design on graph paper.
Or a character that you originate in a musical.
Or an album of songs that capture feelings and friendships.
Or a home filled with color, creativity, beauty, and love. On today's Makersode, we're going to talk to someone who truly sparks us.
And that special someone is Sutton Foster. Sutton Foster, welcome to the Spark File.
Hi, guys.
Welcome.
Hi. Thank you.
Sutton, we're so happy that you're joining us today. And we want to start by asking you, where are you right now and how are you right now, but for reals? Hashtag pandemic realness.
Okay. Well, right now, my husband.
Give your exact street address.
my husband, my family, my husband and I, my daughter, we have a house about an hour outside of the city. And this is actually where we came on March 12th when it all,
Wow.
And so we came, I was like, we're leaving, and we got out and we were here pretty much the entire time until about the end of September. And then we've been sort of back and forth to the city, but we've been out here for the holidays. So it's
great.
this sort of magical little house, and we're right on the water, and there's just lots of space. And right now I'm in my office, my craft room, and I'm on my couch, and my dog Mabel's snuggled next to me, and I'm surrounded by yarn, and I'm it's good.
I love that image.
Heaven.
I'm moving in. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Gosh, and March 12th means that you were proactive, because March 12th, was that even the day that the NBA had announced? Or remember there were those benchmarks that were like, whoa, this is happening.
The night before, we were sitting in our apartment. It was March 11th. It was that night that Trump was on the TV doing the address about closing the travel from China or Europe. It was closing Europe. And we were like, and I turned to Ted and I was like, we're leaving. Ted, my husband had like theater tickets for the next night. And I was like, you're canceling your theater tickets. We're taking Emily out of school. We're going to the lake. And we just, it was like a Friday and we got out of there. And sure enough, like that day was the day that Broadway, everything shut down. So, and then we just kind of like came up here and
you got a jump start.
Yeah, it was wild. It was wild.
How has it been? How's your pandemic been?
Okay, for reals. For reals. So I am, I was so overscheduled and so
preacher. Yes.
I was so tired that at first I was like, woohoo. Like it was kind of like this
snow day. Yeah.
It was, I mean, that's like a crazy complicated thing to say because obviously
I feel similarly. Yes.
You know, it was such a, obviously, bigger than anything that we could control and thousands and thousands of people affected. But we, for about the first month, I was like, oh my God. And I had nothing on my calendar and nothing scheduled. And
for the first time in your life.
Yeah. And there was no like FOMO because
no one was doing anything.
Yes.
So it was kind of like, I mean, it was scary, but then, and like my dad lives up here. So my father, moved up here with his lady friend, a couple of years ago to be closer to us and Emily, my daughter. And so we, I like saw my dad every day and I would like walk my dogs over to his yard. And like my dad and I built a swing set for Emily and we like, it actually was like this really wonderful time. And then we spent the whole summer here and we really made the most of it. And like, and then I slowly started sort of, scheduling little things here and there, but I sort of fell in love with the space that I just didn't have. And I was kind of okay with that. And like, and oddly, and our nanny came up with us because the day we left, she said, I know we were so lucky. She said, can I come with you? And we're like, sure, just bring enough stuff for like a week or something. And then she was with us like the entire summer.
Wow.
And it was actually really wonderful because we became like this little family for Emily. And it was, there were some really wonderful things and we spent a lot of time outside and hiking and gardening and bike riding and kayaking.
I know that feeling, Sutton, though, when you started speaking, I also have had these sheepish feelings where I speak very haltingly about how it actually has been. It's been a lot of things. It's been a tossed salad of scary and sad and grieving. And also this little introvert is like, this is great. I've been so sheepish about saying like, I feel this is a very privileged thing to say, but had a very, very good pandemic.
And I'm an introvert too. So is Ted. And so I think both of us we just like leaned in, Yeah. And we watched, I think over 100 movies.
Oh my God.
I know. It was
the Ted Griffin Film Festival.
It was
amazing.
We were just trying to make a list of all the movies that we watched because and it's just insane, but
do you think there are things about this time that you will carry into when we return to a new sort of normal, this falling in love with this sort of space? Because you are a very hard worker who is highly scheduled. Yeah. Do you think that this time will change the way you continue to live your life?
I hope it does. I mean, that is one of the things I will take out of this, that I really want a slower paced life. Like I'm filming. We're filming right now.
You're working
the seventh. grateful.
Totally. Yep.
So I realize how lucky I am to have a job, and that I work for a company that is willing to pay all of the extra money to, keep us safe. And so, I realize that, but I think moving forward, I'm looking forward to, because I feel like I'm like, oh, this is this thing that I've always wanted. I've wanted more space, yet I'm, my ambition and my hunger for creativity, mainly. It's like to create, to, all of those things. Like I need to find the balance. And I think that's, I'm super curious how it'll all play out, but I don't want to go back to that, that overscheduled, feeling of, where I was just, just sort of barely holding on.
I have a feeling that you're not alone. And I'm like, I really have such high hopes that when we get to rebuild what we want it to look like after this, that we can retain some of the things that have really worked in our benefit, that have been good for our health, that have been good for our well-being.
Yeah. Like Ted and we're trying to figure out what our life looks like and what we want for our daughter, and like, where do we want to raise her? Where do we want to be? What does our, and like our latest, and who knows, you may talk to me in 5 years and I'll be like, what was I thinking? But our latest thing is we are starting to look at farms.
Oh, yes, girl. Yes.
And we literally are like, we're not going to have like livestock or anything, but the idea of having, land and space and a garden and maybe some chickens. Ted's on the fence about the chickens, but we've always wanted to.
It's a commitment. It is a commitment.
I know, but we've always wanted to rescue dogs, and so we have 2 rescue dogs, but we want to have
a little rescue.
We want to have like a little rescue, and like, so that's like something we're like really talking about, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, that's what we should do. So we're like on the cusp of like, I feel like that feels like there's like a truth in that, and like we're sort of on this, I don't know. So that's sort of where we're at.
That's big and exciting.
The thing I love about this is like, because we've had a little bit more time and space to breathe and to think, and not just be very like sort of task oriented, eyes on the prize, one foot in front of the other. I think creative ideas like that, that's deciding how you want to shape a chapter of your life, I feel like is a profoundly creative thing that we don't always have the capacity to consciously tend to. So I hope, you'll move in a direction that's right for you and for Ted and for Emily. But I think the possibility of that is super exciting.
Yeah, me too. It feels authentic to us, and like sort of what there's something that we're both like, so we'll see, Well, it'll be the foster farm. We'll foster animals, and the foster farm rescue.
John Stewart and his wife have that farm where they rescue farm animals. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Now, Sutton, we always begin the Spark File with a price of admission. Really quick, can you tell us a creative risk that you've taken recently? And perhaps looking into a farm life qualifies, but if you've got any others top of mind, we'd like to hear it.
Oh my God, I have a billion that I can think of. I've always been a bit of a leaper. The thing that's like glaring in my brain is taking on Marion and Music Man.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I wanted to do it was because it felt unexpected, and it felt because even when they asked me about it, my first reaction was, really? And then I thought,
really?
And then I thought, that might be interesting.
and it was just risky enough that it got you buzzing a little.
Yeah, it felt like to be honest, like I was. That's sort of how I. But yet, I'm moving forward with it with like this equal parts. We've done several workshops of it, and I mean, not workshops, labs or rehearsals, and et cetera. And as I move forward with it, it's like I move forward with excitement, risk, terror, fear of failing, fear of, but also that's sort of what keeps me kind of hungry and wanting
and
to
interested.
And like, I want to quit. Like and I thought, well, that's so interesting. So it's like I equal parts, like want to quit and figure out a way to get out of it, yet still, I know this is all fucked up, but this is my brain. And then yet that's also why I want to do it. I know.
Yeah. I always think of those as the ones that make you feel alive, because you're like the full spectrum of feelings equated with it.
And there's I have hurdles with it, with just like my own, primarily just like my own, perception of, which is like, which is primarily like what I think other people expect. And then I'm like, well, I can't, that's not a way to, I went through the same experience doing Reno and Anything Goes. It was feels very similar, where I felt like, again, I wanted to quit. I felt like, why, I'll never find this. I'm going to fail. And then it became like this, like, I remember calling my agent at one point, like after a tech rehearsal, and screaming in the phone, I will not fail. I will not fail. And he's like, oh my God, and so there is like this sense of like determination, yet terror, and like knowing when you need help, and knowing that, but then yet something that's also like, what's so exciting. And like, I don't want to do the easy, like, I feel like, all of my sort of professional creative choices are the left turns, the unexpected, the challenge, and that's sort of what excites me.
I feel like people might be surprised to hear you talk about, I mean, just given your track record and your skill set, that they might be surprised to hear that you actually actively, authentically fear that you might fail when you tackle these, like when you're sort of climbing these creative mountains and creating these characters. I actually think I'm surprised, honestly, to hear you say that you have doubts, I guess.
Oh God. Yeah. And like I move forward with the doubts, and like, that's what, isn't that what, I mean, isn't that like what being an actor or being a creative person is? It's like, you have to learn to be comfortable in the uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it's, that's sort of, you have to like allow it to be unsolved, and like, and you have to sort of keep showing up, and every day it's like, I mean, I equate it to like crocheting a blanket or something, it's like the finished product isn't there on day one. You have to start stitch by stitch, and you do a little bit every day. And some days you make more progress, and other days you just do 3 stitches. And some days you have to take out 5 rows because you made a mistake, and you have to start again. And it's like, that's what being a creative person is. And sometimes you have to look at a YouTube video to teach you how to do the, some crazy ass thing that you've never done before or whatever. So it's like, you have to like constantly, and then one day you look down and you go, hey, look, I made a blanket. Shit. It took a couple months, and I did it, and now it's done. And you weave in the ends, and you make the little finishing touches, and then you put it on your couch or your bed or whatever. I don't know, like crazy metaphor, but it is.
Where is this metaphor going?
I know. But it's like every day is like a little bit at a time, and then you just keep going. I do something creative every single day. At least I try to.
Yes.
And it's, and it kind of keeps me like sane. And it's like, and in many ways it's like saved my, life, it's gotten me through like heartbreak and, it's gotten me through my mom, like so much. I'm actually, I don't know if you know this. I'm actually currently writing a book and it's about my life seen through the things I've made.
What? Oh my God.
So it's the working title right now. And again, all this might change, but it's called Hooked, how crafting saved my life. And it's like all of these pieces that I made throughout my life and then there's essays about each piece. And it's like, it's kind of, it's been this.
It's like love, loss, and what I made.
Yeah.
Yes, that's gorgeous. That is, oh my God.
So it's a really
I'm
cool.
cavelling over here.
But it's really, it's been this like, so that's been something I've been working on during this time. But that's like, that's another big creative risk because it's just something I've never done before, Yeah. And I'm sort of learning this whole new, I'm working with someone. We're writing it together, but that's like but yet it feels very authentic to sort of.
That's what I was going to say.
I want to tell my story.
This feels so authentic to you. It's just gorgeous. It's so gorgeous. I'm so excited to know about that. For people who don't know you, for our listeners who are unfamiliar with your work, they now know that you are a burgeoning author. But could you tell people if somebody comes up to you at a party and says, "What do you do?" How do you answer? How do you identify creatively?
God. What do I say? I guess.
Do you say, "How very dare you," and throw a drink in their face?
Yes.
Don't you know who I am?
How dare you?
That is very off-brand for you, but okay.
I'm really trying to change my image though. I guess I would say I'm an actor. I guess I would say that.
Plus.
Yeah, I know. It's so funny. I'm like, I'm an actress. I'm an actor, singer, dancer, crocheter, mommy, dog lover.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
We were talking before this interview and we were saying, we're trying to contain this within an hour and it's going to be tricky because of all the creative things that you do. Mm-hmm. So let's keep unpacking this actor, crocheter, mommy, dog lover, plus, Sutton Foster.
I'm so curious to know, like, when did you become conscious of your own creativity? Have you always had all of these things in your life, or did it sort of start with one thing and then expand outward and start including more types of creativity?
Let me think. It's so funny. My mother was, my mom was a homemaker. My dad worked for General Motors. We don't really have a lot of like, as far as like singing, dancing and that stuff. And like my mom used to cross stitch. So like that was like her hobby, and her sister, my Aunt Marianne, knits and cross stitches and quilts and does a lot of things like that. And is a very good cook. My mom, not so much, but but I remember as a kid, I started dancing. My mom put me in dance classes, and then I was doing like theater and stuff. And I fell in love with being on the stage and performing, and then finding like sort of other sort of creative outlets. I loved art class. Like I loved to draw and paint, although I was never really, I loved visual stuff as opposed to writing. I remember my mom who had a very cynical, sharp, evil wit at times said,
"Wow, yeah,
to be true, But she at one point said, she goes, "You're not the writer. Hunter's the writer." She's like, and so when she said that, I started journaling. Yeah.
Whoa.
Oh, wow. Defiant.
Yeah. So, because I realized early on that if anyone ever told me that I couldn't do something, I immediately had to prove them wrong. So like every time my brother told me not to date someone, I always dated them. Because
oh my God.
I'm an idiot.
Even to your own detriment.
Yeah. Because I was like, oh yeah. And then I would go and date them like a fucking moron. But anyway.
We were talking to Tiffany Gavin, who's the new head of the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center. And when we asked her, what do you say to your critics? She said, watch me.
Oh yeah.
This electric shock went through my body. And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Watch me.
I feel like that's so many people can let a no, deter them or derail them. And for me, every no or every criticism was like a challenge.
I think that's a superpower.
So
I think that's
good.
that is it can be. I guess it could, depending on what it sort of pinballs you into, like you were saying, like it could pinball you into some bad boys potentially, but it's, but it seems like when it's used thoughtfully, that could be really powerful. I think sometimes I let the no be a no, and I've historically let it really like scare me or shut me down. But I love that. Mm-hmm. I love what you're saying. That's a great way to play it.
Yeah. So I felt like even, I did continue to do, to draw, and like, I love to doodle and do stuff. But I the very first time I started like crafting was really, in response to, I was on tour. I toured very young. I was 17 when my first professional job, was with the Will Rogers Follies, first national tour. Mm-hmm. And I was very young, and I was a very young 17, and I just did not fit in. I had a lot of social anxiety, and I did for a very long time. And I sort of, my social anxiety and my fear of not fitting in led me to crafting. And it became like my, in many ways, it became my friend. It became like an identity, especially in like at 17, 18, 19 years old, when you're like, who am I? What am I doing? And I was like, I'm a cross stitcher.
I'm this person.
I started cross stitching first. I still have like a couple of the early things that I made. I made a lot of things for my mother, actually, and which my mom's passed away, but my dad, we still have them. And so we just found them in boxes, and I was like, oh my God. And
wow, that's amazing.
And then I started crocheting. I taught myself how to crochet when I was on vocal rest. So I like blew my voice out doing Greece. I was on the national tour of Greece at 19, and
I think our friend Thomas Schulteis. I think
of course,
friend of the pod, Thomas Schulteis. Yes.
So we were very close on that tour, and I just needed like finding a hobby and finding something to do was like that was another sort of creative outlet. I always, when I talk to my students, my 3 pieces of advice are say yes to opportunities, trust your gut, and get a hobby. I was like, I'm like,
that's really good. It's very succinct, but it's true.
Yeah. I was like, get a hobby, get something that you can do that you have creative control over.
Yes.
That doesn't require someone giving you permission to do it. So that
Yes.
And you don't need to convince anyone to do it with you. You can do it on anytime on your own.
It's on your own. You're not waiting for the phone to ring or for someone to, it's like, it's yours.
But I can also picture you on a tour bus, or like it gives you somewhere to rest your eyes. It gives you something to do with your hands. It gives you this point of focus. And it's all those things. And I think even when, if we're lucky enough to have the social anxiety melt away eventually, and it still remains this beautiful, meditative.
Yeah.
My mother always has something working in her hands, always, always, always. And I've noticed now how, number one, I just think there's so much love that can spool out of that. But also, I know that when I am doing handwork, it leaves the top of my brain open to think and to sort of play. And I have the best conversations. I can listen better when I have my hands working. So I'm so into this. Can you tell a little bit about what you feel like crocheting does for your brain and your nervous system?
I think it is like a meditative practice. It is this repetitive motion. I feel the same way about my drawing, because my drawings are very repetitive, because it's all like the same motion. It's the same shape. So like, I do circle drawing. So everything's a circle. Everything is done by hand. I've sort of played around with like a lot of different ways of like expressing my artistic, and I kind of flip back and forth between drawing and crochet. And but the crocheting for me, like, and it's changed. Like when I was going through, my divorce from my first husband, I was doing Young Frankenstein on Broadway, and we had kind of like a very public sort of separation, and we were both in shows, and it was just kind of like off, and all I wanted to do was, run away and like get out of town. But I was in this show, and I was freaking, I was a hot mess. And the only thing that saved me was crochet. And so but I was sort of like the psycho crocheter at that point. So I decided to.
That's just manic insanity.
So I'm actually sitting next to the blanket that I call the divorce blanket. And it's right next to me. And it's made out of like the scratchiest, gnarliest wool. And it is these intricate, it's actually it's brown. It's got brown edges, but then it's like actually these really intricate, crazy flowers, like crazy psychotic flowers.
Read about it in the book.
Like it's psychotic. And I would it's all these like squares, and I made 100 of them, and they were just stacked in towers in my dressing room. And I would I would do a scene. I would run downstairs, and I would just stand in the doorway and crochet, and people would walk by, and they'd be like, oh my God, Sutton's lost her mind. And then, at the end of the show, this is just hilarious. At the end of the show, I was like, what am I going to do with all these squares? And I threw them in a black hefty bag, no joke. And I threw them in my closet, and I like abandoned them. And I didn't do anything with them until another bad breakup, which happened at the end of Anything Goes. And I was like, fucking blanket. I pulled the hefty bag out, and I dumped all the squares.
You fucking blanket.
Yeah, I dumped all the squares out on my.
Just beat it into the blanket.
Yeah, yes. and I sewed it all back. I sewed it together, and I had this giant quilt. And I was like, because I was like literally trying to sew my life back together.
Oh, yes.
And so I put it together, and then I have this blanket that has a lot of energy in it, like a lot.
Yes.
And I'm like, I don't know what to do with it. So it just sort of sits in the corner.
Do you like
also
it?
Like, oh, it's gorgeous. It's crazy.
This will be in the book, right? Good.
It does sort of become a piece of art that
it's like
we say frequently.
Capsule.
Yes, we say frequently. It's a David Sedaris quote. If you have to live through it, you might as well make something out of it. Yeah. And I think it's really interesting that instead of like making some emo song that you wrote, or like some breakup poetry, you put it into this like scratchy ass psycho blanket. I think that's amazing.
I mean, I could have turned it all sorts of things, like it could have been a dark time. And instead I made something, and I'm proud of that. It was like a really dark 3 years of my life.
For that. Yeah.
And so I made that blanket, and then I did Shrek. Shrek was after that. And while I was doing Shrek, I made 7 blankets.
Wow.
Like big ones. So again, just like more neuroses. But then what ended up happening with like crochet is that it changed after Emily was born.
Huh. In what way?
So then it wasn't a way for me to like get out anxiety or get out stress. It was like
love.
I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to make it. I started filling the objects with love and like protection. And yes, I still had anxiety and stress, but it was like and then something else happened. So I had to go back she was born on March 5th, 2017. And I had to go back to work on April 3rd. And I had to go, I was filming. And I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? And so I made her a blanket, and I made her this like blanket with all the numbers on it. And then it's, and I followed a pattern, online, there's like a million patterns and you can always, find things. And then, and up until her, I was always just following someone else's pattern or what had been written. And then I realized that, I started making some other blankets of some animals, and I was making some. I decided I wanted to make 10. I wanted to make 10 baby blankets, and for that year, like as a challenge for myself. And to auction off for an adoption charity, which because my daughter's adopted, and I thought, this could just be a wonderful way to like give back.
That's so creative.
And so as I was, the very first one I made was like this little owl, and I follow some crochet bloggers who I love, and then I was, and I realized, oh my gosh, I don't have to follow a pattern. I can actually use my art. Wait a minute, because so then
all
I started
those years of drawing all those little circles in your art. Yeah,
I know. And then I started breaking. It's so. Oh my God, I have so many stories, and they will all be in the book. But I ended up. I mean, it's so crazy that So anyway, we could talk for a long time. But but then I started like breaking free of the patterns and creating my own. And it was like, that's what Emily, so it was like this parallel thing that was happening. Like I didn't have to, so I started taking my artwork and putting it on and creating my own things. And then now I'm like, oh, I have this whole new freedom of making things. And and that's been like, eye-opening to me.
And the metaphors in that.
Yes. It's been amazing to watch how you have gone from a person who interpreted patterns, and then I saw it happen sort of on social media where you became a person who was originating your own patterns and putting it in first blankets and then putting it into garments and really, really beautiful, creative ways. And it reminds me, I'm so happy that I get the opportunity to ask you this. So years ago, I think you were doing Anything Goes on Broadway. You were between shows. You and I met for a meal, and we were talking about making things. And during the course of our conversation, I was struck by something. You had, and I think continue to have, an abundance of really high quality ideas, and just you're sort of this font, very naturally a font of creative sparks. And you kept insisting that you were like, yeah, but I'm not a writer. I'm not like I remember you saying you could maybe design the backdrop for a show, but you weren't a writer. And my takeaway at that time was when it came to making a show, you characterized yourself as an interpretive artist. But I will tell you, Sutton Foster, you had more original creative ideas than many originating artists that I know. And I just wonder, in light of what you just shared about this transformation from becoming an interpretive artist with your crochet work, how do you think of yourself now? Do you think of yourself mostly as an interpretive artist? Do you think of yourself more as an originating artist now?
So interesting. Not to go too deep, but I think my mom, I had a very tricky relationship with my mother. My mom was really the reason why I am, she truly is the reason why I'm a performer. She dug out opportunities for me. She totally, but my mom was also undiagnosed agoraphobic, mentally unstable. I mean, there was definitely just challenges, growing up with my mom, and for my entire life and my early career, a lot of my career was, trying to win her favor. It was almost like she was my worst critic. So therefore, if I could somehow impress her, and so I feel like that was like this motivating, probably not it was it was not, it wasn't conscious. Like I didn't realize, and it's funny because even with like critics and stuff, I stopped reading reviews after Thoroughly Modern Millie, and because I was just so desperate for validation and praise. And I think it was because I wanted, like, I thought, well, maybe if they like me, my mom will like me. I mean, it was pretty deep shit.
Yep.
And so I was in therapy for a long time, nine years. And then I ended up at the end of Anything Goes. I like broke up with my therapist, and because I was sort of transitioning and moving to Los Angeles. And I also sort of felt like I've sort of like accepted my mother, and I'm not, it was like this, I had this mantra of like acceptance without expectation. And I had just sort of come a long way. And I was 36 years old, and I was like, I think it's time that maybe I like, go about this like on my own, and I was single, and I was like moving to LA, and I was like starting this whole new chapter of my life. And then in 2014, my mom passed away. And when my mom passed away, I realized I had to redefine my relationship with why I was an actor.
Mm-hmm.
And
because if you're not pushing against that person, if they're not there.
Like, was my ambition the same? Was my, and it was this interesting time because it coincided with doing Violet. And Violet became this completely healing, redefining moment for me. And I think I also sort of came into my own in a different way, but I don't think it really happened until then. So I felt like I was kind of, I would agree with you saying that I was more of an interpretive, kind of, and then I feel like I have more of it's so interesting to say, but I think it has changed, and how I look at work, how I think of myself as a performer. One of my favorite things to say to my music director, Michael Rafter, who I work with quite a bit, and it's my favorite thing, but it also terrifies him every time I say it, is I go, I have an idea. And he's like, and and it's like, but I am a leaper, and I have ideas a lot, and I'm always like, ooh, this would be cool. And maybe maybe it'll be terrible, or maybe it'll be wonderful. But I do, there is a part of me, my relationship to my work has definitely changed since my mom passed away. And it's more for me now. It's not about anybody else. It's like, it's really for me. And so it that feels interesting and wonderful. And like, I care less, even though I still care, but I just kind of, it's like just like, we don't have to make things so freaking hard. It's like, they're hard enough as they are, we don't have to dump more on top of it. So it's like, all of a sudden I was like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to like, I have this mantra where I say, I'm 45 now. And I say, I'm 45 years old. I've worked my entire life to be at this moment. I can allow it to be good.
Yes, you can let yourself have it.
You can just let yourself,
all of that.
Like, let it be good. You don't have to like, you don't have to make yourself small.
What would this feel like if it was easy? And also, yes, to you turning to Michael Rafter and other people that you have collaborations with, and confidently and joyously saying, I have an idea, which I think are, like, in this house, those are some of the most exciting words that get uttered several times a day. I turn to my husband and I say, I have one of my patented ideas. I love that you have surrounded yourself, it sounds like now, with people who, it sounds like your mom, Laura's mom, this is well documented, very complex moms, very challenging moms. And to have people around you now that you can turn to and say, I have an idea, and have them go, oh no, like in a fun, exciting way, instead of a you're not the writer sort of way. I feel like that is something, it's hard earned. And I'm so happy to hear you say it.
Me too. It's so exciting and liberating.
I want to say again, Sutton Foster. And I'll be honest with you, I talk about it when I teach, which is a lot, I kind of use you as an example of somebody who, I'm like, this is somebody who historically has characterized themselves as an interpretive artist who has more great ideas than I hear from a lot of other people. And the other thing that I got a sense of, and I could be full of baloney, but that you have so many good ideas that you don't have a lot of attachment to whether they get used or not, because like myself and like Laura Camion, you're just like, there are so many sparks of inspiration flying around.
There'll be more. Yeah.
There'll be more
ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that that's what's so cool. Like I'm and I flit about, like there are things that excite me one day and things that I'm like, or whatever. And like one of my favorite things to do ever is to work with my friend, Michael Rafter. And he's my music director, and he's like a true collaborator. And our list of like no's, like the songs that we pick or the things that we look at, is like 2 stories high. And the ones that we say yes to is like this tiny little pile. And it's because we're like, no, nah, or whatever. And we're able to like, we like throw so many things. We throw so many ideas into the pit, and we trust each other so much. And we don't take any of it like personally. We're just like, oh, what about this? And we're like, and then every once in a while we go, oh, there it is. And it's off, and we go, but that's what I love. It's like we're like great tennis players. Like we lob the ball back and forth to one another. And I feel like that's where, and you have to, I think with ideas too, it's like, yes, but to find a true a collaborator, I think, is a real gift. Like someone that you can really bounce ideas off with, but also to be willing to. It's like that great improv game, to be able to say yes and what about this, and to be willing to like not be so precious with the like to be willing brave, to be like like, what is
that's
it?
Right.
To sort of keep discovering.
And that kind of partnership is golden when you can establish it, find that person and establish it. Now, with Michael, you do a lot of teaching. Can you tell us about your work as a teacher and as a director?
So Michael and I both are on adjunct faculty at Ball State University, which is in Muncie, Indiana. And
you're an adjunct faculty member at a university.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And I know you some, Foster. That's
I know. I have two honorary doctorates.
One from
bucket shit. Wow.
One from Ball State and one from Boston Conservatory. So I know I'm so
hot.
Cool. Yeah. And so, but at Ball State, I've actually been working there since 2010. I've been there for like 10 years.
Wow.
And Michael and I and 2 other teachers there, Bill Jenkins and Jana Tavanini, I can never say her last name, have created a cabaret class. And it's actually really awesome because I do a lot of concert work with Michael. Not right now, but
the best concerts.
But we work with the musical theater seniors, and we pick a composer. So we've done Berlin, we've done Gershwin, we've done Cole Porter, we did women composers, we did the Beatles. We did
holy shit!
Like this year, I think it's Disney. I haven't been as involved this year because of everything, but and so we give them assignments, and again, it's like, ooh, what about this? We have like ideas, and we give them assignments like, okay, pick a Cole Porter song, but sing it like a superhero. You have to pick a superhero, and you have to sing a Cole Porter. It's like crazy stuff like that, or like you have to play a character from one of your favorite movies, or you have to, But we do like social, we have like almost like social injustice week or so, something like, my biggest thing with young people is I'm like, okay, you have to sing a song and it can't be about love and it can't be about yourself. Like it has to be about like someone else or, and one of the things that I do that's the thing that I love about this class is that it's all about ideas. It's all about like, throw it into the hat. And like, it doesn't have to be perfect. Even if it's just the spark of an idea, maybe the song is like a disaster, but you have an idea. And, what if we do this,
Yeah.
and roll with
Yes.
it. That's what the class is about. And it's about what I love
Kicking
about it.
open doors. Yes.
Yes. Is that it gives each student the power to find their own voice. And they're not playing a character. They're playing themselves. They're finding their own creative way they want to share their talent. It gives them the tools to be able to create beyond like a play or a musical. They can they're like, I got friends, we can put on a show, like, let's go.
Yes.
So it's like putting the creative power in their hands. And then so at the end of the 15 weeks, we have like all these ideas. Every week is a different assignment. And then at the end of the week, the end of the 15 weeks, we like look at everything. And then the students pick their favorites. Like, what did everyone, and then we put all of those together, and then we create a show. And then I help with like patter and like putting it all together in like order. And then they do a performance in.
You're such a fucking creative artist.
You're
such an originator. Yes. Lucky
It's really fun. I love it.
You can tell, cool. like I can genuinely feel it. I can feel like what a gift it is for those students. Amazing.
And to you,
really,
it's a gift.
I wish
to
that
your
I had
life,
had
too.
something like that. I think as a student, because I can see them being like, wait, again, it's like breaking free of
that's right
patterns. And I'm like, they're like, I can change the key, and I'm like, yeah, you can do it like with a banjo. You can do it as a ballad. You can like add another song. You can do anything you want. Like it's like taking the reins off, and you see them go, and it's like this sense of freedom that they can like. It's exciting.
Yeah.
And some of the students, like, they blow me away. I've posted on my Instagram page, I've posted 3 videos from 3 different years of just some of the work that these kids have done. And it's pretty exciting. Like they're really, and it's all them. That's what I love. Like, as the teachers, we just kind of like gently sort of, we don't do anything. We just give them idea. It's just like, let's just talk about it. Let's like have ideas as opposed to you're singing this, you're doing it like this. Yeah. Go stand there. It's like, okay, well, let's like, it's like, it's very cool. It gives them a lot of creative power, which I think is nice.
It sounds like teaching them literally a creative process rather than giving them an assignment. And that's such a gift, I think, because a lot of people graduate even with, performance majors and don't have a creative process that they feel belongs to them, that still are awaiting assignments from people.
Exactly. And it's like,
to this day. Yes. Decades later. Yes.
Exactly. So it's like, it really gives them creative power. And I think that's really,
oh my God, I love
really
it so
cool.
much. What you're talking about, like helping people to free themselves and to get their arms around their own sense of creative agency is everything. It's so good. Sutton. So there's a topic we're obsessed with on this podcast. I don't know why I feel like I must pronounce the T's in your name.
Sutton. Both of them even, Susan. You hit them both.
Sutton. There's a topic we're obsessed with on this podcast, and it is, but not the T in podcast. It is, we're fascinated with processing creative failure. Can you talk to us about one of the biggest perceived failures you've experienced or challenges that you faced and how you processed it?
Oh my God.
See, I always feel like you are always knocking it out of the park. Yeah. So if I'm like, what will you possibly be able to think
do
of?
you have something you feel like you failed at? I remember you saying, I will not fail. I will not fail. Your agent is like, no, she doesn't. She will not fail.
No. I mean, it's so funny because it's like, even just the idea of failure. I mean, I've been in shows that have failed. It's like, how do we categorize? I feel like, and also like, how do we look at failure? So, and what can we learn from it? So like even like regrets and failures, like it's funny. It's like, yes, I have regrets. Yes, I have failure, but I'm also like grateful for them.
Yeah.
Like if I think of something creative that I did that I feel like was a failure, yet there were things about it that I'm such an optimist that immediately I'm like, but there were things about it that were like really great.
Amen.
Like, so
Sutton, Thomas Schulteis and I actually wrote a workshop together that we're very proud of called Let Me Try That Again. And it's all about taking a perceived failure or like a tough piece of criticism someone gave you or a flaming curveball, an unexpected thing in life that came at you. And it is about like the story. Everything will be okay in the end. If it's not okay, it's not the end. And it's trying to teach people that you can, as long as you can draw a breath, you can extend the story and continue to write it and rewrite the ending. And when I'm hearing you sort of like feel the answer to this question out in real time, here's a hypothesis, and you can tell me if it's on target, off target. You can tell me to fuck off. But you might be really gifted at metabolizing perceived failure and sort of extending it and looking for the gifts in it, looking for the things that you might actually, your school of hard knocks may have taught you how to keep moving through it and processing it.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, the early career moments that were, incredibly challenging, even Millie opening and feeling like which is so weird. It's like, I have a different perspective on it now. It's 20 years later, and I perceive it differently. But when it was happening, when the show opened, I felt like I had failed because the critics, it was a mixed response. And I went to a very dark kind of like terrified place of like, my naivete was like, oh shit, that was, what happened? And then, I literally remember, and I was just kind of like, just sort of trying to, and what's so interesting about what we do as, stage performers, it's so different than like TV or film, is that we open a show, the critics have their say, and then we have to go back and keep performing, and like, and that was when I was sort of reading all the reviews, as well as my parents were reading everything. And I just felt like, oh my God, I've let everyone down. And yet I still had to go out there and keep performing. But in a way it was like, I like, I learned from it. I kept going. I kept, and then I kind of even learned, like, I stayed with the show for 2 years because I felt like I still had so much to learn, about, so that's why I stayed for so long. Cause I was like, I'm going to figure this out. And then, and I even think of Little Women, which was technically a failure. Like, we only ran, it was like 6 months or something. It was a very hard show for me. And I was very unhappy, and it was just so hard. And, to watch a show that I loved very much, but then, like with Millie, the audiences loved it. And it was like, and we won the Tony, and it was like, oh my God, it was like a surprise. And I was just like, what, and then with Little Women was just this sort of it just like slowly died. And it was very painful. And I that was very hard, but yet it like taught me things, and it taught me how to, create limits for myself, like vocally. And it taught me that I wanted to be a part of an ensemble show. That's why I did Drowsy Chaperone. I didn't want to be above the title. I wanted to take a step back. I needed to go a different way. And so it like,
I love these fine distinctions. Great. I love that learning.
I feel like every single, and then, I had a major failure. My marriage was a major failure. And that was, that was 3 years of my life where I felt like I was in sludge. Like, and I was still working and I was still moving forward, but every day was like sludge. Like it was really a dark, I mean, it was a prolific time. Made a lot of blankets, but
I was going to say, but we got the blanket out of it.
We got blankets. So like, I'm like a weird,
good.
you know, I think I am an optimist at heart, and I'm always trying to find the silver lining and like failure, regret. Like I don't really, and even regret, I think I've learned even all those, you know, all the horrible men, they all led me to like meeting Ted, and like, I don't know. It's like, you have to kind of like, it's all kind of part of it. And, you just have to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
It's very great. Healthy. And I think really good for people to hear that you can find the good in things, that, you know, something that you perceive as a failure or someone else perceives as a failure isn't going to kill you. It may build character, and it may, you know, be painful for a period of time, and you may make some blankets. But you're going to be okay. Yeah.
But you're going to be okay. And like, I came out the other end, and I, you know, And
I feel like something I say frequently to friends who are sort of going through tough breakups or divorces is this idea of like the trudge over divorce mountain was so hard. But then after you've trudged that trudge, if you process it thoughtfully, from all that learning, you learn more about yourself and what distinctions are important to you. Then you get to connect with somebody who very similarly, like I think all three of the people in this podcasting moment have had that experience where we have come out the other side, and now we have really strong, happy homes and relationships. That's right. And I don't think we would have gotten here without all of the learning that came from that other stuff. It also reminds me of this thing that we might have the same lawyer, but when I was getting divorced,
oh my gosh,
Stu Nahas was my lawyer.
Yes, we do. We do have the same lawyer.
And I love him. I love Stuart Nahas. And because my husband and I, we had a very amicable divorce. And so we both were represented by Stu. And Stu said to us as we were sitting there, you know, collaborating essentially on the structure of this divorce, he said, you know, this is really hard. And this is actually, it gets into crocheting. He goes, but it's sort of like you have this knotted up ball of yarn, and we're going to straighten this yarn out. And then you get to take the yarn and you get to make something else out of it.
Ooh, I'm stealing that.
I was going to say, wouldn't it be funny if that was Sutton's line to begin with?
Put it in the book. I would love it if you had taught Stu Nahas that line, and then he taught it to me.
Really funny.
But it was true. Like when he said those words, I go, I love Stu so much.
And I was like, done everything for us.
Yeah, I was like, Stu, I hope you're right. I love the optimism and the hopefulness of that. And I love a good crafting metaphor. And he was right. Like Stu ended up, it was so great because after I met my now husband, Nathan, and Nathan and I were buying a house together, and Stu represented us on that sale. And he was so excited and happy to see our happiness. So, anyway.
That's amazing.
So sweet.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Sutton, you work so effing hard, as evidenced by this whole conversation, everything you've told us. What's it all for? Just a light one, ending on a light note.
What's it all for? Well, I think it has evolved. You know, it's like I sort of answered it earlier, where I think so much of it was early on in my career, like, especially my stage work. I think was to win the praise of my mom. Yeah, and to have her really like see me.
Yeah,
oh,
yeah. That's a whole. I need to drink more bourbon, but she.
We'll compare
what's it
notes.
All for? I feel like, oh my God, I don't know, because it's like my, what's it all for? It's like it's for my sanity.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
You know, I'm not, I I'm not good at being idle. Like I love to, it's like, so funny. Whenever I hear someone that they don't have a hobby or anything, I'm very confused. It's like I don't understand.
What do you mean?
Understand it, because like I have so many things, and I feel like I have so many things that bring me joy.
Yeah.
And I love to perform. I really do. But and maybe this happened really with Millie, where I actually, yes. So like, it's so funny because I felt like when I was doing Millie and I was kind of struggling, and I felt like I was eating, breathing, sleeping. My entire existence was Millie. And I was like, this isn't good. And I was, I thought, I was like, I gotta like take care of, I gotta do something that like, so I was with Christian at the time, and we had this tiny apartment on 55th Street. And luckily, I mean, I don't know why he didn't get rid of me then, but I was just constantly trying to find something that was like, that had nothing to do with Millie. So like I got African violets and I started taking care of those, and I bought every book about African violets. And then I decided to get goldfish, and then I got a couple more goldfish. And then I was like, oh, goldfish need like 10 gallons per goldfish. So I need to get bigger tanks. And then I got 3 tanks. And then, I know it gets worse. And then I brought home a hamster named Judy Jingles. And then and then I was drawing, and then I got really into video games, and then I know. It goes deep. And then I was like, we got to get rid of the fish tanks, because this is insane. And then I had other plants, and then we got a dog. We finally were like, okay, we're going to get a dog. And then, so like I've started like searching for, other things that would bring me happiness, so that if I didn't belt that sea, it wouldn't like ruin my day.
You were diversifying your portfolio.
Yes,
exactly. So like I could come home and I'd be like, okay, so it wasn't the best show, but I'm going to work on this drawing, and I'm going to let Judy Jingles run around in her ball. And I'm going to like, I had other things that brought me joy, so that my entire identity wasn't wrapped up in either what a critic said about me, or what, or whether or not we got a standing ovation that night, or whatever.
Yeah.
So what is this all for? Ultimately it's for me, for my sanity, and for balance.
Yeah. And it's like diversifying joy too.
Yeah. And diversifying joy. And so like, if the phone doesn't ring, and I've always been the type of person who like thinks like, 10 steps ahead. So, I'm always, if I never work again, like if I don't work, I have like all these great things, and I'm like, I'll open an Etsy store, or I'll rescue dogs, or I'll, I don't know, like I have like other things that bring me happiness, and like I'm still searching for new things. Like I'm constantly like, like
but
I want to.
I think you are really a person who has a lot of really good sparks. And a lot of things, you're a curious person. There's a lot of things that I think you want to like get your hands on in this lifetime. So it makes sense to me that I feel like you're one of those people that if you were like, you know what, I'm not going to do 8 shows a week, and I'm not going to do, a wildly successful television show anymore, your days would be filled.
Yes.
Filled.
Yes.
Filled. Yeah.
I've always I've loved the term Renaissance man, and like everything that it sort of conveys, and that like interest in so many diverse aspects of life. And I wish there was like a Renaissance woman. I wish there was a phrase that like sort of encapsulates that in female form. But it just strikes me that, you're living life that way. You're living life with so many diverse interests. And
maybe we can they're a real Sutton Foster trending. Maybe that can be
they're a real Sutton Foster. Yeah. That's right. I'm going to use that.
A real Sutton Foster.
Yep. You just don't meet that many, but when I do, I'm going to use that phrase, Suze.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So here's I think one of our final questions for you, Sutton. What or who is sparking you these days?
My daughter.
Yeah.
She's pretty freaking great. You know,
yeah.
She's like, she is so, she's so inventive and so like, she like sparks me to have ideas for her. And like,
yes,
like we're constant, she's like, you know, she loves to play and she loves craft. She loves to help me cook. Like we're constantly like coming up with new ideas of things to do, or like, Mommy, go get me some trash so I can, and I bought her like glue sticks, you know, for Christmas.
Genius.
I bought her like, you know, it was from Santa. So I gave her this big bag of like glue sticks and you know, crayons and paper and all this stuff. And I said, I hear Santa, you know, Santa's heard that you're like really into crafts. Like she loves crafts. Like when I take her to Michael's, she like, it's like my greatest, you know, I'm so proud. And she's like, I need a craft, you know? And so but like we love, and like, she is so curious and so, interested, and like, and it's all sort of, she's almost 4, she'll be 4 in March. So it's all sort of firing right now. And so I'm just like, and like, she's just, you know, you just kind of come up with like, and she's also like really teaching me to, let go too, like let go of, even just my own, like, oh, well, you shouldn't do it that way, or, you know, this is the way you're supposed to do it, or, you know, and I'm like, okay, that's great. You know, like, let's go. And like, just like really trying to like encourage her
Take the ride. Yeah.
Yeah. And she has a vivid, you know, crazy imagination, and her hands have personalities, and she has like a whole imaginary, like with her entire body that has like names, and like they talk to one another. And I mean, it's insane. So she's a delight. She's so fantastic. And we have like this character that we've created, this monster, and his name is Heinz, and he's like this German cookie monster. And so we have like, he's
sparkish.
Yes.
Never a dull moment.
Never a dull moment.
I would be remiss if I didn't say this. This is like a really quick tangent before we wrap up. So I recently did a Spark on the podcast about resilience. And there's this gentleman named Dr. Stephen Southwick who literally wrote the book on resilience. And one of the pieces that I found so helpful, and I've been using in my life ever since I read it, is this formula for a mindset that really, really embraces resilience. And it's kind of a 2-part formula, which is, this is really fill in the blank. This is really hard. This is really challenging, but I know fill in the blank. So it could be like, this is really hard, but I know I can figure it out. Or this time in my life sucks balls, but I know if I keep putting one foot in front of the other, I'll come out on the other side. So I was listening to an interview with you, and you quoted your daughter, Emily, who on a hike said, "It's rocky, but I will try my best on the tricky parts."
Yeah.
And I was like, that Emily
so
rocking the work of Dr. Stephen Southwick. It's rocky, but I will try my best on the tricky parts. And I was like, that is a great piece of advice for creativity and for life.
And for life. Thank you, Emily. That was sweet.
Thank you, Emily. And thank you, Sutton Foster.
Thank you so much for spending this time with us.
Oh my God,
thank you. I wish we had 5 more hours.
Me too.
So it's thank you guys. Thank you guys for sparking creativity in me. This was wonderful. Thank
you.
You
are a joy. So that is it, our friends. This episode of The Spark File was made on Muncie, Lenape, and Seminole land, and we hope that it put another bunch of sparks in your file. Listen, if there's a spark you'd like us to explore, or if you've taken a spark and fanned it into a creative flame and you'd like to share that with us, we hope you'll email us at thesparkfile@gmail.com or submit it through our website, thesparkfile.com.
We will even happily take your feedback, but you know the price of admission. First, you have to share a creative risk that you've taken recently.
And be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe, rate, 5-star review it. If you like this podcast, it really helps people to find it and listen to it. You can also share it with people that you love. And if you didn't like this podcast, I don't know, Sutton, what do you say to your critics?
Suck it.
Yes! Suck it.
Yes.
If something tickles your fancy and gets your creative juices flowing, we're writing you a forever permission slip to make that thing that's been knocking at your door. It's your turn to take a spark and fan it into a flame.
You got to take it
and make it. Bye.
Thank you, guys. That was awesome.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I wanna make or how I wanna be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.